Now let's get to one of the many reasons that we could sit and talk to you all night long, and nice to see you on the show again, my friend. You're always welcome here, is about China and its influence, right? China and its influence in universities. I believe that Australian universities have chased the cheap buck and have traded off academic freedom through things like Confucius Institutes and so much more. Why is now the time, when we already know about the legislation about the foreign deals that are potentially about to be overridden by the Commonwealth, why do we have to have an inquiry like this into this sector specifically?
Paul, everything's changed in the last 9 months or so. This pandemic has blown up all the assumptions we hold about the world and our own country, indeed the economic assumptions of the budget this year. And the Prime Minister, when he did his strategic update a couple of weeks ago, said that the world post-pandemic will be poorer, more dangerous and more disorderly. And the organising principle for Australia going forward is sovereignty. We need to have a competitive advantage in a more disorderly world. And so we need to make sure all our institutions, including our universities, are pulling towards the Australian national interest. And right now, many of my colleagues and I are not convinced that the universities are acting in the best interests of our country. There's been a couple of examples now where we've seen participation in the 1,000 Talents program in China, and the universities aren't tracking it. So this inquiry is about putting a spotlight into the sector.
For want of a better word, why do you think Australian universities have been so incurious about tracking those things, about policing the agreements in the same way that they would want to police or over-police something like Western civilization courses that they weren't willing to have in their own institutions?
Well, it does make you ask the question, why are they so quick to enter into these arrangements with overseas governments like China? Sure, there's big financial incentives. We've got a lot of foreign students who have been coming to Australia. There's lots of research collaboration with China, and so there's a range of reasons. But I think the number one is financial incentives, and of course, where money is the driver, we let other things fall by the wayside, including a culture of inquiry and a culture of academic freedom. We've seen up in UQ with Drew Pavlou. We've seen in UNSW down in Sydney with Elaine Pearson, the Director of Human Rights Watch, who was effectively censored for having a view on the Hong Kong protesters that was pro-protesters. So all these things need preservation, and the inquiry is a good way to encourage universities particularly to get on top of their institutions and make them work for the national interest.
I know others asked you about it, but here's my chance, which was last week when the official from the Chinese embassy was at the National Press Club, and apparently it was incredibly hilarious that we served Australian beef. Oh, that'll really, sock it to them. What about some tough questions? This bloke was supposedly in some sort of outreach moment, but of course was, little jab here, little jab there. Of course, after the federal government came out and said what is absolutely the case, which would be the case in a place like China, which is you can't enter into foreign arrangements unless the government, the sovereign government's able to sign off on it. They turned around and then said straight away that it was putting bacteria into the relationship. They will always make it look like everyone else is the bad guy. But unbelievably, there are people in our own country in plenty of bits of establishment that have sold out for their 30 pieces of silver. They're in the establishment and turn around that somehow that you guys are rocking the boat that you shouldn't. What do you say to those who think that maybe Australia's leaning too forward in standing up for itself? Not my view, but what would you say to those people?
Well, I would say that we're doing what every Commonwealth government should, and that's stand up for the national interest. We don't want to be pushed around, and we don't want to push others around. We just want to be able to pursue our sovereign interests, live according to our values, and do so in a neighbourly way. But if other people, other countries are going to sort of dictate terms to us, we're going to push back. It's the Australian way. It's how we operate culturally. And that's a good thing. So the Prime Minister, I really do applaud his leadership on this. He's not seeking to provoke anyone. He's just standing up for Australia. And that's all we want in a Prime Minister, which is why me and other backbenchers are backing him to the hill, because he's doing a great job.
Agree completely.
And that's all you can ask of an Aussie Prime Minister.
Well, and I tell you what, he has been of that view for a very long time, but it's reinforced by good people like yourself. Look forward to talking anytime we get the chance. Good on you, Andrew.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for your time.